Hello again, and welcome back to the Black Diamond Podcast. This is episode 8 of the program. I am your host, Chris Hecker. I got a new haircut and a new camera, so hopefully hopefully this is the best you will ever see me looking on this podcast. And I'm joined once again by Jerry Durney. Jerry, thank you for joining once again. And how are you doing this evening?
Well, first off, the haircut looks good on you, my friend. And second, things have been pretty chill since the last time we were on air, right?
Yeah,
Don't really know
definitely.
of
Yeah, definitely nothing happened at all.
yeah.
Nothing happened, especially especially nothing that like an hour away from where I live. I can't really
You,
think of anything. It's just a really hot weekend.
but
But
enough about the Heston Kerstad incident. Anyway,
yeah, actually, I think we should talk about that the Heston Kershad incident. So I think that's a great segue into our first topic. So as far as that Heston Kerstad incident goes, which may have been a foreshadowing of things to come uh, later on later on in the weekend, but uh, yeah, starting out the weekend, the Yankees played the Orioles in a 3-game series. It was their first series win in about a month, so that was good. They were this close to the sweep, but
yeah.
uh, yeah, just too many. Anthony Volpe couldn't field that ground ball, and Alex Verdugo, I don't know, he like forgot where he was in left field or something, and
I
just had
watched
to
the end of
fall
that game.
down.
I'm like, hey, that looks familiar.
Yeah.
I know that loss.
Yep. Yeah, it's all too familiar. I was definitely raging, but if we throw it back to Friday, the first game of this series, uh, the Yankees were up 4-1 in the ninth inning, trying to close out. Trying to close out a game as you do, and they bring out Clay Holmes. It's a relatively non-eventful inning until a pitch got away from him and hit said Heston Kerstad in the head. Uh, Obviously, for a minute there, it's pretty scary. He was on the ground, and he was on the ground, not really moving too much. And then, the O's manager comes out to check on him, and then like Clay Holmes, like clearly he's concerned about this man's well-being. Like this was not on purpose.
No.
Uh, why would you throw at someone's head in the bottom of the ninth inning of a game that you're trying to close out, that you desperately need to win? It's a division opponent against, no offense to Heston Kerstad, but when you think about the Orioles lineup, that's not exactly, the guy you're thinking about. That's not exactly the guy you're thinking about giving a free pass to first base in the name of whatever
Right.
retribution you could be trying to achieve,
If you were going to
especially
send a
not.
message,
But especially not in that situation. So Clay Holmes kind of takes a few steps, like to kind of check on him, and then you could kind of see the manager. You could kind of see the manager like mouth to him like "fuck you," and then someone from the Yankees dugout was kind of someone from the Yankees dugout was kind of like chirping at him or yapping something at him, and then he just tries to he just tries to go at him, and Austin Wells is holding him back, and then next thing you know, you have the bench is clear, and you have a real meeting of the minds. Right around the area between the pitcher's mound and home plate. And there was a lot of pushing, a lot of shoving. But I think that I think that everyone was kind of like on the I think everyone was kind of on the same page that like this was not like an intentional not an intentional beanball, because I think everyone knows that if you are gonna do that, if you are going to throw at someone to send a message, you're not throwing at their head, number one, and number two, you're just not doing it in that situation.
Right.
But nonetheless, the bench is clear, the minds meet, the bullpens come out. You had a bit of a scuffle. I think they said that Kerstad had a concussion, but hopefully it's nothing. Hopefully it's nothing too serious, and nothing more. Nothing really more than no more than that.
Yeah. To me, it's like you said, it's 4-1 in a division game where I forget what the games back were at that point. I don't know if the Yankees were a game up or a game back, but
they were behind. They were, I think at that point they were like 2 or 3 games behind.
yeah, but this isn't a game to be doing that,
No.
or at least if it's like 13-2 in either direction, it's like, all right, well, if we're gonna get him, we better do it now. But yeah, I can't see Clay Holmes, who's having his own troubles of late, and it's like, yeah, why would you put a guy on when you're trying to get outs just to restore your confidence? And I totally get why he wants to come check on and be like, hey, man, most pitchers seem to be, and through the history of baseball, like, you hit a guy in the head, like, that does something to you because you're like, you never know. So I totally get Clay Holmes being shook by that and wanting to make sure he's all right. I can also understand Brandon Hyde. One of the main roles of a manager that will never change. We talk about what managers are and aren't now, but what will always be true is you have to defend your guys. And
Oh yeah.
sometimes you have to be a little irrational. And it's like, I think if Brandon Hyde could like take himself out of that situation, step back and look at it and go, yeah, we're trying to get back in the game. Why would he hit our guy? They need 3 outs. Well, there's no reason for him to do that. But in that moment, Heston Kjerstad's supposed to be another one of those next generation guys for the Orioles. I think he was I don't know if I'm confusing him or Kauser, but I think they were both at least top 5
They're
picks.
they're all a bunch of clones. They
Yeah.
all look the same.
They
They
added
all
to
look
it
the
this
same,
weekend.
and
They have
yeah.
a type. But Kjerstad's one of those guys. I think he was a number 2 pick. Like, they're hoping he'll be like, he could be the guy that moves into Cedric Mullins' spot or Austin Hayes' spot, but they're kind of counting on him. And even if he wasn't hyped like that, if you're the manager and any one of your guys gets drilled in the head, yeah, you're going out there and you're like, hey, what the fuck, man? What are we doing? And, I don't know if we'll get confirmation on what exactly was said from the dugout, but in that moment, your guy's on the ground, and I'm sure it took him a minute to get back to where he was. When you get your bell rung like that, you don't know where you are, and sometimes you're just out. So in that moment, you're tending to your guy who might not have been there, and you're hearing chirping from the dugout. And I mean, I don't even say this necessarily as a baseball thing. I would say this as a life thing. I feel like we've all been in situations where there's a lot of tension from something that happened, and we all do something that's like, yeah, I'd like that one back. I bet Brandon Hyde a week out is like, yeah, I probably didn't need to do that, but you have to almost as a sign of, one, I'm in charge of this team, and 2, those guys need to know I'll go to bat for him. And sometimes you have to go to bat for your guy, even if logic says this wasn't a declaration or intent of anything. It just unfortunately happened. But when you see that again, if you're the leader of the team, like, you have to be up there like, hey, if you're going to hit one of our guys like that, you're going to have a problem with me, and we'll handle this right now, even if it's not the most rational thing to do. And I know that might be an outdated way of thinking, but I get it as a manager. It's like, hey, if our guys are like, they can't just do that. They're like, I'm going to let them know about it. And maybe it wouldn't have ended well for him if fists were exchanged, but I understand Brandon Hyde feeling like he needed to do that.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty good point, and I can, I could definitely understand it. He probably knew in the moment, like, if you're just thinking about it, like, if you just think about it logically for 1 second, and even in the heat of the moment when you're pissed off, like, you can probably, if you could probably use your brain for 2 seconds and think like, yeah, that probably wasn't on purpose, but I do think that he wanted to send that message that he's going to stick up for his players. It kind of reminds me of like a few weeks ago or like a month ago, whenever it was, when Manny Machado got ejected from the game. And
Yeah.
then the manager came out and he was like, he was talking to the umpire. He was like, I really don't want to do this, but like, I have to go now. Like, you have to ring me up.
Oh
He's
yeah.
like, I think generally you're doing a good job, but like that was a bad fucking call. But like overall, you're doing a good job. So just like I don't really want to go through this whole dog and pony show. So just eject me because it's like this is what we have to do. We have to stick up for our players. And then the umpire's just like, all right. So in a way, there might have been a little bit of acting. Like I think that Holmes like kind of you know walking towards him was kind of his way of saying like, hey, I didn't mean that, or I didn't mean any ill will or anything like that. Like that pitch got away from me. I've been struggling with my commands for quite some time now. So
Yeah, because
uh,
if he simply does one of these, like give me the ball and turns around and walks away, that's like Clemens type shit. That's what he used to be like. Oh, guy hasn't moved for 30 seconds. Give me the ball. You know,
exactly.
that would have really stoked it. Holmes was trying to
Yeah.
be human there.
Yeah. He was trying to have a human moment, but I think that in doing so, he kind of set Brandon Hyde off a little bit, and then whoever from the dugout, whatever they said, obviously that struck a nerve too, and you know. I mean, you could kind of see the look on Austin Wells' face, like while this was all going on, and while he was like holding the manager back, where he was just kind of like, why are we even doing this? But that's baseball, I guess, and it happens. Baseball isn't always meant to be. It's not always meant to be playing nice. Sometimes you got to play not nice, even if it's not necessarily completely warranted. So
Speaking of orange, Chase Utley still has them. I want that on the record.
yeah, he will. He will probably go to the grave with those warrants for his crimes against Ruben Tejada. Um,
I don't know if you saw it. I guess that we're gonna touch on All Star Weekend and all the festivities, Chris. But did you see the kid Miro trying to fight on behalf of Don Zimmer beyond the grave, running at Pedro in the celebrity softball game?
That I did not see.
Oh,
I saw that Merrill was at the All Star game. I saw like some clips on Instagram of like him and like Nikki Cass and like doing some shit or taking pictures together. But I did not see. I
he
did not
leaned
see
into it.
him.
He leaned into it explicitly to get hit, just so he could run at Pedro. And Miro also touched grass as it ended up happening.
Oh man.
And it was one of my group chats. I was like, man, if I ever cross paths with Chase Utley, like, I'm not saying it would end well for me.
But you would do your due diligence. You would do what you have to do.
It's like I might lean in and like, hey, I just want to shake your hand and just lean in and
yeah, like hey, I just want to talk.
I had to give you one. I had to give you one.
Yeah. MLB did nothing about you.
Yeah.
They ejected Noah Syndergaard after he threw one pitch at you, and they really never got their retribution for that. So
the loudest building I've ever been in my life.
You were at that game?
I was at the next game at Citi Field. That was 2015 is the most fun season for me for a litany of reasons, but as that series started to take shape, I was going to have to go to Rochester on that Sunday for my friend's wedding. And as it got closer, it was like, okay, like they weren't going to pass the Dodgers. So like we knew, okay, they're going to have 3 and 4. They're not going to catch them. And then the series schedule comes out and I'm like, oh, they're going to be there Monday and Tuesday. And it's like the way that season had unfolded was a dream. And it's like, okay, they're in New York the day after I'm in Rochester. Like I have to go. Like I've got to figure this out. And an umpire who worked that series, a longtime MLB umpire, lived down here during the off season for a long time, and he used to work at my high school. He in the off season he would help coach basketball, and I knew him pretty well at that point. So I called our head coach and I said, "Hey, this is what I'm doing next week. Does he get a ticket allotment?" He's like, "He's actually in town this week. I'll call you back." Calls me back an hour later and he's like, "He's got your number. If he can find something, he'll text you." And I'm like, "Well, I'll find a way there." Flying to New York the day of game 3, and I turned my phone back on and it's a text from him saying, "I got one for you at will call tonight." The loudest thing I've ever heard in my life was when they were introducing the teams, and they introduced the Dodgers first. And since he wasn't starting that game, they introduced the reserves, and they'll go pretty quickly. To be like, catcher number 14, AJ Ellis, infielder Enrique Hernandez. Like, it'd be like 2 seconds.
Yeah. And then
they get to second baseman number 26, Chase Utley. They let that go for 45 minutes.
They knew what they were doing.
44,000 people could yell everything in the book at him, myself included.
That's pretty unreal. So you flew into New York not knowing, like, if you were going to, like, where was your backup plan? Like, I'll just buy a ticket for, X amount of dollars, or did you just fly into New York, like, on a whim? Like, if I get a ticket, I'll go to the game if this guy just hooks me up, or if not, then I'll just, like, find, like, a place to go watch it.
So game 3 was like, all right, if my friend comes through for me, great. But I was staying with my cousin, and he had gotten a standing room tickets for game 4. So I'm like, if all else fails, I'm at least going to game 4, and that's cool. But I was like, all right, if I can go to both, then I'm going to both. Cool. So it just happened to luck out that way, and that was pretty neat. One of the best moments of my life was later in that game when Cespedes hits the ball that I still think hasn't landed, and also had the all-time bat flip title belt for about 24 hours. Because Cespedes had an unbelievable bat flip in that game that nobody remembers because the Bautista game was
the next day.
It was either the next day or the day after that. Like, understandably, nobody remembers it. But,
yeah.
And I didn't even see it in person because I was too busy watching that ball go up to Vermont.
Yeah. No, that's nuts. That's pretty awesome. I thought when you first said, like, that was the loudest you've ever been in a stadium. I thought you meant you were at the game, like, the following year where Noah threw at Utley when he was he was still on the Dodgers, but
and then the mic'd up moment.
The Terry Collins and the umpire and all that stuff. Like, that would have been pretty cool to be at. I remember that year I was actually at a Mets Phillies game when Chase Utley was still on the Phillies. It was like very early in 2015, like April. It was like an April game against the Phillies, and I remember, like, I think Chase Utley did something, but I remember Terry Collins. Like, I was going to the bathroom, and, like, Terry Collins, like, came out and was, like, screaming at the umpires, and I think it was something that Chase Utley had done that had pissed him off.
What's always funny to me is if you go to, and I'm sure you know this because you go to games all the time, before any game in any major league stadium, they do, like, that Department of Homeland Security video where it's like, and it's an umpire in the locker room being like, my job is to see everything going on the field at all times, but anything can happen in a stadium. You are the eyes for us here in the stands. If you see something like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, that's Tom Hallion, the ass in the jackpot guy. Anytime I go to a game with someone who may not know about that, I'll be like, that's the ass in the jackpot guy.
Yeah.
Like, no way. Like, yeah, that's a real deal umpire. And he was that guy.
They should have had him, like, rewrite that script, like, after that, to be like, our ass is in the jackpot on the field, but off the field, it's your ass that's in the jackpot.
Everybody's ass is in the jackpot.
Make sure you keep an eye out, and because if you see something, say something, because if you don't, your ass is in the jackpot.
They could even have, like, a little cryon on the screen that says Tom Hallion, ass in the jackpot guy.
Yeah.
Oh, him.
Yeah. Anyway, today's show for the most part is going to be a little different than our usual shows. It's going to be more less about the current landscape of baseball, and well, it's going to be tying the current to the past, and we're going to be talking a good bit about some milestones or records that may or may not ever be reached again that we'll be discussing. But before we do that, do you want to give a little? Do you want to give like a little recap of how the Mets ended their first half, and your thoughts on the All-Star festivities?
Well, they took 2 or 3. Well, first off, since we last recorded, they swept the Nationals. I thought they were going to sweep the Rockies. You have a 6-homer day. Random dude has a 3-homer game against you. Like, you just got to shrug it off. Like, you won 2 or 3. Like, sometimes just the randomness of 162 games happens. Like,
yeah,
they won 7-9 going into the break. Like, all right, you lose the last game before the break. Like, you don't like that because then you got to sit on it for 5 days, and that's not fun. But other than that, hey, look, from where they were at the end of, I went to the Darryl Strawberry retirement game on June 1st, and walking out of Citi Field that day, and Arizona thumped them, and I went with my cousin and a couple of friends of mine, and we were just like, yeah, I mean, they punted on this season. I mean, what can we really expect? How can we really be mad about any of this? And to turn that now as we sit here the night after the All-Star game as we record this, and I mean, I don't expect this team to be playing for the NL pennant or anything like that. I mean, there's still very much flaws with this team, but to be sitting at, I think, 49-46 or 49-47 as we get ready to start the second half, hey, look, that's a win. I'm going to go to one of the games this weekend in Miami. I'm going to go to the Sunday game, and it's going to be fun to go and just see, like, okay, these games actually kind of sort of mean something. Do I know where this team's going to be in 2 months? No, they still have a bullpen to fix. They have a great closer, but the bridge to him is
the bridge to him is pretty rocky.
The starting pitching has really rounded into shape and really speaks to how much of a great two-way catcher Francisco Alvarez has become. Because all through the minors, all we ever heard was, yeah, this kid has a generational bat, especially a catcher. And we never heard anything about his defense. So it was never, okay, he's not good defensively. Because you knew that about Mike Piazza growing up. It was, yeah, this guy may be the best hitting catcher ever. He's not going to give you anything behind the plate. But you live with that. If the guy's going to be that good at the plate, you live with it. So we never heard anything. So I didn't know if he was bad, but it's like, okay, if this kid can hit, great. We'll take it. Him turning into such a force behind the plate where you see each of the starters' ERA numbers, where this is the ERA when Alvarez catches him. This is the ERA when anyone else catches him. And I know for Quintana, it's at least 2 runs. I think with Sean Manaea, it's at least 2 runs. I want to say, I don't think Peterson has a big enough sample size to where you could really compare the two. But I know Severino's numbers are really good when he's got Alvarez catching him. And he solved the running game issue, which had been a problem with the Mets for years. I mean, I think he can go all the way back to 2015 in terms of having catchers that you could run on at will. Especially this year. I think like 40 of the first 41 successfully stole on Met catchers. Didn't matter who. Alvarez comes back from his injury, and that stopped. And that's pretty big, and that helps your pitchers too. So, again, I would, if I had to give a grade on this first half, it's a B+. Like, yeah, there's flaws. There's things they still need to fix. They're still going to have to address at the trade deadline. Starling Marte apparently is no closer to coming back from his injury, which isn't good. So they'll probably need to go get at least someone who can start every day in right field, because you can get by with Tyrone Taylor for a couple weeks. If they're really serious about, like, hey, let's go for it. We didn't expect to be in contention this year. Let's go for it. I don't think he can be your everyday right fielder for the last 2 months or whenever Marte gets back. DJ Stewart, nice story in the back half of last year. That has ended. So there's been talk about them going to get Jesse Winker from the Nationals. That'd be fine. I also think that would be very funny, considering he's a good pantomime villain with Met fans. I think that would be very funny. There's been talk about them bringing Mark Canha back. I'd be all in favor of that, too. Obviously, you would love to see them go get more bullpen help. They went and got Phil Maton last week. Not all that wild about it. He wasn't having the greatest year with Tampa as it was.
No.
I don't think he can be the only guy that you add into the bullpen. So hopefully there's more coming.
Yeah, he seems like more.
Go get David Robertson. Bring him back. Wouldn't hate that. Hopefully Kodai Senga is back by the end of the month. Each of his rehab starts have gone well so far. You also don't want to rush him because, as good as he is, if you're sacrificing the next 4 to 5 years with him to make a run this year, I wouldn't. Like, yeah, this has been fun and cool if it leads to something. I don't expect it to. I don't want to ruin Kodai Senga because we might have a shot at something. Don't bring him back any earlier than he says he's ready for. But other than that, a nice start to the half. And to touch on the All-Star game, I feel like you would probably, you're pretty smart from the times that we've talked. I feel like everyone's on the same page on this. Ditch the game-themed uniforms for the All-Star game.
Yes.
Just let them wear the regular uniforms, please. I say that wearing my 2012, but this is a batting practice jersey. This was what it was at the time. We were all fine
those
with
like
that.
the home run derby. Because it's like the opposite. Like it used to be, you would wear the like the National and American League jerseys for the home run derby, and then you just wear your normal game jersey for the All-Star game. I really don't know.
So cool about that, where it's
it just all the different teams.
Dustin Pedroia, and they're wearing their regular uniforms. That looked cool.
I mean, that might not be the best example of it looking cool, but I appreciate the sentiment, but I do agree. There was something about you see like Derek Jeter at shortstop in the pinstripes, and then Mike Trout's in center field with his Angels uniform, which
nice.
I'm wearing an Angels shirt for some reason.
Pretty sharp.
And then and then you got. I'm just trying to think of I'm
trying to think of that era.
Just trying to think of that era. Like you might have, I don't know, you might have or
you might have Vladimir Guerrero and right. Well, that would be another Angel, so that wouldn't work. You'd have Miguel Cabrera at first, and he's wearing his Tiger uniform.
Yeah, or like Raul Mondesi in right field in the Blue Jays uniform. There was something about seeing like all the best players in the sport, all wearing their different jerseys, like on the field, like playing together. There was something that was like
team that's got one guy, and it's like, all right, we're not all that good, but we have him.
Yeah,
and
that's
like,
our
he's
guy.
In there repping your team. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, like it would have been awesome to see like Paul Skeens like come out like in his Pirates uniform, just to be the youngest starter in All-Star history with his Pirates uniform on. That would have made it that much cooler.
Someone said that instead those uniforms would be fire at Cosmic Bowling. I cannot unsee it.
Yeah, no, whoever said that definitely has a point. But I did see something, I think, on Twitter that I think Rob Manfred said that there had been discussions about just bringing back the regular uniforms for the future. So, he hasn't really done anything good yet, but hopefully if there's one thing he does, if there's one good thing that he can do, just do that. Like get yourself at least one W as a commissioner. It's been
low-hanging fruit.
It's so easy to do. Like it's actually less work. To just let them wear their own jerseys than to have your creative team come up with different jerseys for the All-Star game every year that no one really cares about anyway.
Hey, we can trust Fanatics to nail this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This, by the way, I want to point this out. This is actually a R.A. Dickey All-Star game jersey because I correctly guessed at the time one of the Mets going to have a knuckleballer in contention to start the All-Star game again. I was correct on that one, so I figured why not.
That's a deep cut. Yeah, that's no one can ever take that away from you. But yeah,
Home run derby, by the way, very big disappointment. Great ending, but on the whole,
yeah, the ending was the ending was cool, but like that was like honestly, so I mean, also like the MLB kind of took an L having the home run derby on the same day that NCAA football 25 came out. A game that people have been waiting like 11 years for. So I won't lie, like I spent most of my night playing NCAA football. So I had we had like the home run derby on like like the smaller TV, and we were like tuning in. We knew what was going on, but weren't really paying attention. And then like we were about to start another game, and I'm like, oh, hold up, like they're about to like get into a swing off, like to decide who's gonna win this shit, like. So like that part was cool, but yeah, Pete Alonso, he did all that. Pete Alonso showed all that hole for just to get eliminated in the first round. So that was disappointing, and
Also,
obviously,
I do need to point this out. So I was getting ready. I was like, all right, I'll throw it on, and I'm going to take a nap before this starts. So I'm like, it's the kind of nap where you're like half awake, half not. So it's like if your TV's on, you hear it, but your brain's like, oh yeah, get it, got it, good. Like you hear it, but it doesn't register. And I think you know where I'm going with this.
okay.
So all of a sudden, I start hearing this wailing on my television. I'm like, what is the? Is that the national anthem? No, and it kept going. And I'm like, eventually I woke up like, what is that? And I was like, I don't recognize. Hold on. Let me rewind it. When I heard 4-time Grammy nominee, or I don't know if it was 4-time Grammy winner or 4-time Grammy nominee, either way, further proof, just ban the Grammys. If that woman got nominated or won, I couldn't remember. I just know that she was 4-time Grammy something. We have a problem.
Yeah, ban the Grammys. I personally could do without the national anthem at every single sporting event, but
Yeah, first, like, we're just here to hit home runs. Like, do we really
yeah,
need
it's
it?
not even a game. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not even a game. So, like, is it really necessary? That's like a whole different story as far as like, your thoughts on like the national anthem itself. I just don't think it's that great of a song. But yeah, so like, yeah, this Ingrid Andress chick is singing the national anthem. I actually missed that part entirely, but yeah, I saw the video and like, wow, it's just
I remember as it was happening, I'm like, Carl Lewis can't believe he's hearing this.
yeah. I was gonna say
Fergie's like,
like,
I'm off the hook. Yes.
yeah, yeah, that was my first thought was the Fergie All-Star game. I still am not sure which one is worse. I think Fergie might be marginally worse because she doesn't even have the excuse of being drunk.
Yeah,
Like,
like Ingrid Andress, I think was like, oh crap, I have to do this. So
yeah,
I think she tried. I do.
yeah, I think she tried her best given her condition at the moment. I mean, like the pictures and the video of her doing it, like she looks like she's like plastered, like
Oh
while
yeah.
she's singing it. And yeah, and then yeah, she she entered rehab the next day. You know,
And I would have felt
it's
bad. Like I applaud her for like being like, yeah, I screwed that up. Yeah, I need to go get this checked out. But then she's like, I'll let you guys know how rehab is. I hear it's fun. And it's
I hear it's fun. Yeah,
like
like
you were winning and then
you
you
have
had to do that.
to in a moment like that, it's like you can't really decide like in a moment like that, like you have to either be fully I think you either have to be like fully humorous or you have
Yeah.
to be like completely serious, and like obviously the first the first 95% of your statement was very serious.
Yeah. And people
So
would have
I
sympathized with that. Absolutely.
yeah. So yeah, but then like, oh yeah, I heard it's fun. I'll let you guys know. XOXO. Like that was like not the right way to end that,
Yeah.
because it's like you're kind of especially with like how strongly people feel about the national anthem, and you kind of made a mockery of it.
And then
Uh,
you're making a joke about going to rehab. Like, okay,
yeah, and
so
you're
like you
making
actually
and you're
think you
kind of
need to go,
making a
or are you just
mockery.
saying it?
Yeah, and you're making a mockery of like addiction and alcoholism. So like that wasn't a very good look. But it does kind of go to show that like singing the national anthem is like a very it's like a very high risk, like low reward
Oh
type
yeah.
of activity, because it's like if you do it and you do good or you do fine, like no one really cares. It's just like, all right, you did what you had to do, you
Right.
had your 90 seconds of fame, and you get out of there. um, but if you have like an all-time bad one on a pretty on a pretty grand stage, like the all-star week home run derby, that's a pretty big prestigious event. People are going to remember it, and they're going to talk about it for a long time. I mean, people still might pull up the Fergie video like just for a good laugh, and now that's
It,
like
it's
kind of
been
your legacy. Like I had never even heard of Ingrid Andress
no.
before this, but apparently she's like this great popular country singer. If she has like 4 nominees, or yeah, I think she's a 4-time nominee. But
It's been
either
30
way,
years since Carl Lewis did that. And there's probably a whole generation of people that know him more for that than for the fact that he was like a multi-gold winning Olympian over multiple Olympics. There's probably I knew who Carl Lewis was growing up because he would do track and field and stuff. There's a generation of people now that just know him as the dude who goofed the national anthem. Because what was one of the things I saw on the timeline Monday night? It was the clip of Charlie Steiner being like, it was written by Francis Scott Off-Key. Like, without every time someone screws up the national anthem, that clip is on there. And it's, oh, that's right. That was when Carl Lewis boofed it. I'll make up for it now. No, you won't.
yeah. Yeah, so she has been so she is now forever etched in history for all the wrong reasons. So, hopefully she has lots of fun at rehab and, gets the help she needs, and hopefully we never get subjected to a rendition of that song that's that bad, because I mean personally I think the song's kind of bad enough as it is, but I don't really
just
want
make
to
America the Beautiful the anthem, like, and have the Ray Charles version. Just play
just
that.
just play the Dipset anthem.
Also,
Yeah. But yeah. So I mean, yeah, the home run derby. I mean, yeah, the biggest thing that happened there was, I guess, the anthem beforehand, and the swing off to end it. Congrats to Teoscar Hernandez for winning the home run derby. Hopefully, your swing is not fucked up for the second half of the season. Then the actual All-Star game itself was, I would say that, the MLB All-Star game, of all the sports All-Star games, I'd say the MLB All-Star game is like the only one that actually resembles like the sport that's being played.
yep.
Like, Pro Bowl and NBA All-Star game and NHL All-Star game, it's like, all right, we're just going to play zero defense, and, we're going to score a ton of goals, ton of touchdowns. I mean, shit, the NFL Pro Bowl is like flag football now, and nobody watches it.
Sean Taylor up above is like, you chose to do that.
Yeah,
I will play it as a football game.
exactly.
But what was the one thing everyone was looking forward to last night? All right, Skeens is going to face Judge. Let's see it.
Yeah.
Be it anticlimactic as it was, but still, like the fact of he was going to be up there, and Paul Skeens was going to take that seriously, because I'm sure. I know he had the College World Series run last year, but I'm sure for him, standing right there in that moment, like, man, there's, I don't know, 10 million people watching me throw to Aaron Judge right now. I'm going to sit him down. Like,
Yeah.
he was taking that seriously, and Aaron Judge is going to be like, all right, I'm going to show everyone what's up with this kid. I'm taking him.
I'm trying to hit a nuke. I wanted, with every, as a Yankee fan living in Pittsburgh, with every fiber of my being, I wanted Aaron Judge to hit a nuke in that moment. I was like, and I was just so happy that Soto drew a walk so that we could see it happen, because I was like, man, like if Soto doesn't get on base here, they should really just like bring Paul Skeens in for like another inning, or just bring him in to face Judge and then take him out. But I figured, like, yeah, they're probably not going to like mess around with that too much, because there's so many pitchers, as we discussed on the last episode.
Had time last night.
Yeah, there's so many pitchers that you have to like get in. So like, they're probably not going to really give anyone more than one inning. So I was just so elated, like when Soto drew the walk. I almost felt like maybe Skeens like threw it a little bit inside, like kind of on purpose, just to give everyone the moment that like to give the people the moment that they wanted. So, props to him for doing that, and props to him for making quick work of Aaron Judge, and getting him the ground out on, I believe it was the first pitch of the at bat.
Yeah.
And that was that. The rest of the game, I thought it was a pretty good game overall. You had the you had the Ohtani bomb, and apparently that was the first home run that was hit in an All-Star game since 1996. When I first saw that Bob Nighting, when I first saw that Bob Nightingale tweet, I thought that he was just like being wrong or like spreading misinformation or something, just because he's like so notorious for doing that. But yeah, no, apparently that's like an actual thing.
Well, no, that's the first home run by a Dodger since
Oh, first
1992.
home run by
Yeah,
since Piazza.
yeah,
Okay. That makes more sense. Okay,
yeah,
because I was like, I've watched every All-Star game for like the last 20 some odd years. There's no way there hasn't been a home run hit.
yeah. It was one of those, like, I saw it going around and I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, oh yeah, because I think I had seen something earlier in the day where it's like, here's the last time each team had an All-Star game home run, and I saw Piazza's was on the list, and I remember watching that as a kid, so that one was embedded in my mind. So as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, I know what he meant. But yeah, that was
that in itself is also pretty crazy.
like that immediately enters the arson judge, like.
Yeah.
That one Ken Rosenthal tweet that I will not repeat. He was instructing the one user to read the column.
Oh yeah.
If you're in baseball Twitter, you know the tweet.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna repeat the
handle.
Yeah.
That was back when that was back like when you had, in order to like reply to someone, you had to like include their @ or whatever. So
I miss that Twitter when dudes would when well-known people would just be replying to people where it's like Bong Lover 69 and having an earnest conversation with them.
Yeah, it's like, actually no, fart gas sex haver. No, you are wrong.
No,
But
Shrek's weed man. I can
like, no, Shrek's weed man. I cannot verify that report of Antonio Brown retiring a Raider, even though only he can verify that report.
we have acquired Justin Smoke. Source literally us, the Blue Jays.
Yeah.
I pray they never let me, because that is social media is kind of in the part of under the umbrella of work that I do for the college that I work at now. And I always say, like, don't ever let me get to that kind of level where, because mostly when at the collegiate level, it's you keep it uniform. You see some schools like kind of have some fun with it. It's like, don't ever tell me I can have fun with it, because that'll happen.
You give me an inch, I'm taking a mile.
I'm taking the whole county. Like,
yeah. Yeah.
Also, loser from the All-Star game. I know Josh Naylor's not feeling too good today because Freddie Freeman stomping on his ankle and actually accidentally creating an out. Josh Naylor's gonna be like, "What the hell did I do? This is an All-Star game. We're not trying hard here."
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I saw that and I was like, at least at least like they're like pretending to try. It would have sucked. I mean, luckily I don't think he got like actually injured.
No, he didn't come out.
So I mean, he was fine, but yeah, I'm sure he woke up and like he probably wasn't feeling the best, but he's got a couple of days to ice it up and be good to go for the second half. But still,
also, I saw people complaining as that happened, like, "Oh, we're really doing a replay review in an All-Star game." It's like, look, do you want these games to be real or not? Because I hear you complain about the other games not being treated like real games. This is what they do.
Yeah, and I mean, they kind of, with all the money that people are gambling on the All-Star game,
which is insane.
Yeah, a proud degenerate. I'm proud to admit here to all of you that I did make a couple of bets on this All-Star game. Didn't win any of them, but that's neither here nor there. But I think that the fact that gambling is so easily accessible, and that, like, if you put a market there for people to gamble on it, they're going to gamble on it. So, like, don't think that people will just see that there's like bets available for the All-Star game and be like, "Oh, I'm not degenerate enough to bet on the All-Star game." Of course I'm degenerate enough to bet on the All-Star game. So I think that because like there are people that actually have money and an interest in, like a financial interest in what happens. I feel like they kind of have to, they don't have to get too ticky tacky with it, but if there's
Yeah,
a
fortunately, this was simple. It
if
was
there's a
an out
play,
ball.
yeah, it didn't take them long to figure it out. And if there's a play in question, yeah, just take a quick look on it and get on with your day.
I have to admit, so this is the story I always like to tell people about gambling is I learned my lesson when I was in 8th grade. So this was the year 2000. So if you guys know football, you'll remember this. It was the Monday night game between the Packers and Vikings. And this was just a simple who wins. There was no over-unders, any of that. But it was me and my
Yeah,
friend
just
Tim,
like
and I just said, well, I'm putting $20 on the Vikings. And he's like, all right, I'm taking the Packers. And it was the famous Antonio Freeman catch where like he laid out, it hit his
yeah,
fingertips, went behind him, hit off his
off
foot, he
his
turned around
shoulder.
and it just lands in his lap. The he did what catch?
Yeah.
And I had the Vikings. And at that moment, that felt like a sign from God, like, this is not for you, young man. I'm like, I feel sick. And I knew about gambling at that point. I'm like, I feel sick and I just lost $20. Now I get why people lose $8,000 on something and they're willing to commit felonies. Like, I get it now.
Yeah.
Like, and I just lost $20. My life is not affected.
Yeah.
I am at home. My life will not change. And I'm
$20 in 8th grade, and in 8th grade that day and age, though, $20 was kind of a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like
It's like,
I remember,
like I'm not losing the deed to the car or anything
that's
like
like
that. Like,
that's like lunch. That's like lunch money for the week, though.
yeah.
So
So
that's
I was
like,
like, all right, that's it. Lesson learned.
yeah,
So I see people lose their minds now, and it's like, man, two roads diverge in the wood, and I took the one less traveled.
yeah. It's a good thing that yeah. I guess it's a good thing you you learned your lesson
Oh, that'd be
early.
terrible. I want to make that abundantly clear.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I think about stuff like that because I've caught some pretty horrendous breaks. I've gotten some good breaks too, but sometimes I think about that and I'm like, maybe I should just bet on like what I don't want to happen. Because that way it's like either I get money or the thing I wanted to have, or like I somehow like I'll talk myself into thinking that I actually have an impact on the game, and that if I could bet on something that I'll like jinx it from happening, and then the thing that I want to happen will happen.
Tanner
Um,
Houck Cy Young plus 900.
hmm. Yeah, pretty. That's pretty decent. Pretty decent value for what it's worth. But yeah, I mean, overall, I thought the All Star game was a pretty, it was a pretty good game. There was some back and forth, and then I was happy that the AL won, but not especially happy that Jarren Duran was the MVP and the reason that they won because of his 2-run homer to break the tie and give the AL a 5-3 lead, and then the bullpen shut it down with Emmanuel Clase closing it out with his sick glove that said I forget what it said. It said La Camba, or
Oh
it said
yeah, the
the goat.
design that was pretty strong.
It said the goat in Spanish, which I think translates La Cabra. And yeah, the design was pretty hard too. So like that was a
We
cool
owe
moment.
the Guardians an apology. I mean, we in the larger sense, because people forget he was in the Corey Kluber trade, and I'll never forget when it went down because it was him and he was still in the minors at that point. I think it had like a brief appearance in the majors, but like nobody knew he was this, and it was
Right.
him and Delino DeShields Jr. And the universal reaction was Corey Kluber's been traded, and it's for this. And the universal reaction was, that's all. Like, okay, yeah, he's got 1 year left on his deal. That's all you got for Corey Kluber? Like, multi-Cy Young Award, like one of the best pitchers of the era. You only got that for Corey Kluber? And I think he pitched one game in Texas and got hurt, and then he left. And Emmanuel Clase has been like the second or third best closer over this decade so far. Yeah, they won that one.
Yeah. He pitched. He pitched 1 inning for the Rangers in the COVID season.
Yep.
And then he left the game with shoulder tightness, and then he left. And then he left Texas, and he went to the Yankees the following year and threw a no-hitter
in Texas.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of crazy how these things it's crazy how these things work. But yeah, no, I mean, Class A by all means, Class A is a top, a top two, top three closer of the past past decade or past few years. So yeah, I would say. And like the thing with the Guardians too is like, yeah, they can trade their they'll trade their starting pitchers, like they'll trade Corey Kluber, they'll trade he who shall not be named, Trevor, and they'll trade these like great pitchers that they have, but they always have someone else like waiting in the wings that they'll just like kind of pull out, like whether it's Shane Bieber or like like right now they don't particularly have like an ace per se, but
Right,
like
but they did well to move Aaron Savali, like, and turned him into a good enough pitcher that they got Kyle Manzardo out of it. So that was pretty good.
yeah, so I mean, yeah, for the budget that they have, for the resources that they have, they do a very good job of developing their pitching in the pipeline. So like they always seem to have a plan or someone waiting in the wings when they do trade like a big name pitcher away for something that may seem like an underwhelming return at the time, but it actually turns out you're getting like, you know, arguably the best closer in baseball right now.
Or they know exactly when to pull the ripcord because
Yeah,
people forget they. I always say, they can say that they won the Kluber deal because people love to say that they won the Lindor deal, which one, not true, but two, they threw Carlos Carrasco in there too, which people were furious about.
yeah,
They knew
yeah.
exactly when to hit the eject button on him too, because
Yeah, but they did take him back though.
yeah, they did. Although that's not going so hot either.
No, no, he is the wire fi god. Uh, yes, run first inning.
Oh yeah.
Always
Oh,
hits
and
when he's
has
on the
been.
mound. Yeah, he has been for quite a while. So yeah, if you are gonna indulge, then yeah, that would be a bet I would recommend making. But yeah, they always seem to have a plan or someone that's gonna come and kind of make it a pretty seamless transition. And like, especially with pitchers, I feel like with pitchers, it's like, it's better to move on from them early than to move on from them too late.
Yeah.
They know like right when to trade these people, like right before it's time to pay a contract that they can't afford and get like, just the right amount of value to like keep your team competitive, for the following years to come.
This is exactly what the Rays do. I think Michael Bauman at Fangraphs, he's a writer that I love to read, has pointed out like the Rays have consistently done this. I think it's with 2 years left on a deal because you see a lot of guys get moved with 1 year of team control, and that means you may get an okay haul back, but maybe not as much as you would have hoped if it's a
Right.
big name guy. But the Rays always move on guys early. They did it with David Price. They did it with Chris Archer, and I mean the killing that they got in that trade.
Oh man.
And flipped in that, they got Tyler Glasnow. We'll see how that turns out. And part of that came because it was right after the Glasnow trade, because it was, well, they got Ryan Pepio. We know when they're going to move him, right about 2 years beforehand. They'll probably do the same thing with Shane McClanahan. They did it with Snell. I think Snell had 2 years before it was his turn to hit the market. So this is the Rays know exactly when to get the absolute most out of someone. The first one I can remember them doing was Scott Kazmir because it was the year after they went to the World Series the first time. And
Yeah.
that trade came out of nowhere, and everyone's like,
What are
why
you
did you do
doing?
that? And it
Yeah.
turned out they were right because I know Scott
Yeah.
Kazmir made it back and actually like salvaged his career better than anyone would have thought. But he hit that 4 or 5 year injury window pretty much as soon as the Rays traded him. And in hindsight, yeah, they knew. So if the Rays offer you a starting pitcher, hang up.
Yeah. Yeah. Hang up. Don't listen.
Yeah. Do not return, put on block list.
Yeah. For sure. Anyway, let's move on from the All-Star game unless you have any final thoughts you'd like to give on the All-Star game. But if not, we can
Yeah, just fix the
move on
uniforms.
to fix the uniforms. I think that's like the biggest takeaway from the whole thing. So the rest of the show is really going to be about records and milestones that that we may or may not ever see again in baseball. So we have a few, we have a few records, a few milestones that that we have discussing. So let's get right into it. So let's start off with one milestone because chicks dig the long ball. So let's just start out with the home runs. So uh, you know I'd say that at this point it's fairly debatable whether or not we'll ever really see anyone reach 500 home runs again. Personally, I think Giancarlo Stanton will get there. He has 420 now, and he still has 5 years left on his contract after this. Um, Granted, we don't know what he's going to be. I mean, he's already past his prime, and we don't know what he's going to be for these next 5 years, and we don't really know how much he's going to play because obviously injuries are always an issue for him, and they are currently an issue right now. Like, we still don't really know when he's going to come back from his injury, and Lord knows the Yankees need him back. But I think that he can muster up 60 home runs over the next 5 years.
Yeah, that's like if you get like 15 to 20 per year. I mean, what if you do 20 home runs a year for the next 5 years? That's 100. That would you would clear it right there.
Yeah, and I think that it's I think that is pretty. I think it's pretty doable. I mean, he already has 18 this year, which is, I mean, this is like kind of like this has kind of been like a renaissance year for Giancarlo, because I mean he's the past couple of years, like especially last year, he wasn't too good. And everyone kind of thought, well, this guy's cooked. And like, if you would have asked me this question last year, I would have probably said, like, yeah, he's not going to get there. Like, the Yankees will probably buy him out sooner or later. But with 5 years, yeah, it's like 4 or 5 years left. I was looking at his contract earlier, actually looking at it right now. So he's signed through 2028, and then there's a club option, and then he would be a free agent in 2029, and then he'll be 39 at that point.
And I mean, he's already basically become a full-time DH at this point anyway. And you would think, I mean, I know he's had the health issues, but being the DH would probably be easier on his body than having to be out in the field every day. So, nothing else. He's already in a position where it's going to be easier for him to get there if he can just hold up. But
yeah,
I think that this is the thing that we're going to touch on a lot as we go over these numbers. Is there's guys that we thought would have hit these marks already, but health gets in the way.
Yeah, like being the DH definitely helps his case, and playing in Yankee Stadium definitely helps his case too. All the home runs, they all count the same. It doesn't matter if it's a 319-foot wall scraper at the short porch, or if you hit the ball to Pluto. They all count as one home run. So he does have that advantage of like playing half of his games in the confines of Yankee Stadium, and playing most of his road games in the American League, which are typically more hitter-friendly parks than the National League. So
well,
he
that does balance out having to play the first part of his career in Marlins Park, which is cavernous.
Exactly, yeah. So it does kind of, and that was when he was hitting a lot more moonshots than he does now. Not to say he doesn't still hit moonshots, like he still does, and he still has like some of the highest exit velocity hits of this season. But yeah, no, I think he gets there. But that's a pretty solid point too. As far as health getting in the way, because I remember when Barry Bonds broke like the all-time home run record, which I think we can agree, if we're debating whether or not 500 home runs will ever be broken again, will ever get reached again, then I think that we can agree that probably no one's ever going to touch that.
No.
But I remember when Barry Bonds like reached the home run record, or broke the home run record in 2007. A-Rod at the time, he had an MVP season that year, and he hit like 50 home runs that year. And everyone was like, I remember watching ESPN, and like everyone was basically saying that like it was like a foregone conclusion that like eventually he was going to eventually he was going to pass Bonds. And he finishes his season with 196 or 696. But yeah, I mean, and like maybe if a health as well as getting suspended for using steroids didn't get in the way, maybe he does get there. But yeah, it
Pujols was
just
another one. I think after A-Rod, it was after, I think as he was leaving St. Louis, everyone's like, oh, well, he's going to break the home run record as an Angel. Like, he had held up pretty well for his first decade. He had been the model of consistency from the day he started. And it just felt like, yeah, as long as he's healthy, like, why wouldn't he contend for it? And he ended up just getting over the line of, I think, finished what, 701 or 702?
Yeah, I think he had 703. I was actually so I have witnessed quite a few Albert Pujols milestones in real life. I saw him hit his 400th home run at Nationals Park back in
Oh, wow.
2010. And then he finished his career 2022, and the last series of that season was in Pittsburgh. So I went to one of those games, and I saw him hit his 703rd home run.
Oh, wow.
Uh, I was sitting in the bleachers in left field, and it was like a section or two over from me. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
Uh,
that rules.
yeah, no, that was awesome. But yeah, everyone thought that he was going to break it and that he was going to do it as an Angel. And people didn't really think of, at that time, people didn't really think of Pujols as like, you know, an injury prone type of player. But
No.
the older you get, the more the more that stuff catches up with you. And even if you have the universal DH and even if you have the universal DH and all these things that kind of ghost runners and extra innings and all these things that are supposed to kind of you know make it make it easier on the on the on the body. It's still like just incredibly hard to stand the test of time to get that far. And
We always said with Pujols by the end, like, he could barely run the bases anymore. Like, he was in
oh
such
yeah,
pain.
yeah. And I mean, I guess the counterpoint to it would be that like with the advances in like exercise technology and strength and conditioning and all that, that like players should be able to play longer and be able to break these records, but it just hasn't really translated.
I mean, just the act of being able to generate enough power in your body to be able to do that 760 times on fair balls.
Yeah.
How many times do you see a guy hit one into the upper deck and it's plenty foul? And
Yeah.
then think about all the times that they're working on their power in the batting cage or in the off season or during
Yeah.
batting practice. Like,
Yeah. If
I always think about this with pitchers. Pitchers, like, the whole idea of a pitch count is kind of a fallacy because it's, yeah, you see a guy's throwing 99 pitches. You're not counting his warm-ups in between innings,
all right.
the throws over,
Yeah.
the long toss he did
The
before the
pregame
game,
warm
the
up. Yeah.
bullpen. Like, there's so much more that goes into these guys than beyond just the things that we
Throwing
see in
100
every single
pitches
game.
and over 6 or 7 innings. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a pretty good point too. Never really thought of that. I mean, and they are throwing pretty hard in those bullpen sessions and
Yeah.
those warm-ups because they have to build their arm up to be able to throw that hard when it's the actual game. I mean, like basically yesterday's like Paul Skeens' All-Star game start was basically like a bullpen session for him. He threw like 20 something pitches and he was hitting like he was throwing as hard as he could. He was hitting 99 to 100 at least every time.
I was lucky I saw Ohtani pitch in Miami 2 years ago. Well, I've seen him pitch twice. I went to the WBC final last year, but I saw a
That's
regular
fucking
season
awesome.
start for him. And what he does in between innings is, like, you see guys just throw regularly during their in between innings, and you'll see the radar gun pop up in the stadium. It'll 92, 93, whatever. He's soft tossing. And because you always wonder, like, man, how does he have the energy to do all this, to be able to go up and have 4 at bats every game, and every fifth day he's going out there and throwing? And it's like, Okay, so he's not putting max energy into every single time he throws a ball while he's out there. He knows he's good for when he has to absolutely ramp it up for an at bat. If he's got to put a guy away, he can do it. But he's knowing, like, all right, I don't have to throw 98 for nothing if I'm just throwing to my catcher here. And I thought that was it's something I never really had heard about. You figured someone would have caught on to that. He'd been pitching for 4 or 5 years at that point, but I never knew that until I saw it, and it's never left my brain.
Yeah, no, that's nuts. But yeah, we just haven't seen it translate, and like and not to mention also like the fact that they're always changing the balls too, like whether they're juicing or unjuicing the balls. So like basically every year they're like hitting a different type of baseball. So like there might be years where, like for example, like the 2019 season, they juiced the fuck out of the balls. DJ LeMahieu and Gleyber Torres both hit like 40 home runs. I don't think
JD Davis hit 28. I'll never believe it.
Yeah, JD Davis had 28. Could three players that are all happen to be current Yankees, could you name any other players that benefited more from that than like those three guys?
Well, it's crazy when you look at the 2019 home run list and you're like, Eugenio Suarez had 49.
Yeah.
Mitch Garver had 30. I beg your pardon?
Yeah, it's like, excuse me.
By the way, bring the 2019 balls back for the home run derby. Like, we talked about this last week on the show. Get stupid with it. We are there to see guys hit the ball as far as possible. I don't care if they have metal bats. Give them the 2019.
Yeah,
like, let them shoot up right there in the circle. I don't care.
Yeah, like hitting a ball that far is like hard enough to do regardless of those variables. Like just we come to see the big flies, give the people what they want.
But it's interesting is the whole reason that we're talking about this, because Chris and I were chatting about this, is that you're trying to figure out who the next Hall of Fame guys are going to be. And the thing is for a lot of these milestones that we're going to talk about, no one's really close. Like, we just had that last wave of guys with Pujols and Miggy and all of them that were just retiring over the past 4 or 5 years. Like those were kind of the last guys that we're going to see for a while that are close, and 500 home runs being one of them. Like we mentioned, Stanton's close. Mike Trout's at 378, and he's another guy that I think if you went back to 2016 or 17, it felt like every record imaginable was there for him. It just felt, this guy's been excellent since the day he got here. Why wouldn't he do it? And then the injuries caught up to it. It's very Griffey-esque. Griffey being the original. They did the all-century team at the 99 World Series, and he'd played 10 years. I don't think he was 30 yet. And it was just like, oh, well, yeah, he's going to break Aaron's record. Well, why wouldn't he? Little did we realize, like, playing on AstroTurf for at least half your games, being at home, and we knew all the other stadiums that had AstroTurf at the time. Who knew that probably wasn't a good thing for him? Even with all that, it's crazy to think. And I say Griffey and Trout kind of mirror each other in a sense, because Stan's going to end up with, or Trout's going to end up with fantastic numbers regardless. And we're still going to be like, man, but it should have been more. And everyone looks at that like Griffey finished with 660. That's a stellar career by any measurement. And to think like what it should have been.
Yeah, and to think that he could have been the home run king or damn close to it. So it's,
or at least would have had 700. It should have been.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's
Trout's at 378 and he's 32, so he's got time. It's just, can he hold up? Can he not miss 6 to 8 weeks every year, which always seems to be a thing with him now?
Yeah, the answer to that question always seems to be no, sadly.
And then you look at the active top 10, and it's Joey Votto after that. And this is probably the last year for him, and he's at 356.
Yeah, he's basically, I would say he's basically done. I mean, it was it seemed like kind of a miracle he even like got signed this year. Cause I remember he like during spring training, he was like posting like shit on like Instagram, like and Twitter, like, oh, I'm going to like start, he's like, oh, I'm gonna like start a protest or something if a team doesn't pick me up, and then finally the Blue Jays were like, all right, like you're from Canada, we're the
Yeah.
Canada team, we're gonna do we're gonna do it, but that kind of just seems like it was more of like a sentimental thing than anything.
It's
Like,
the one team where it doesn't feel like if there were any other team, it's like, man, Joey Votto should always be in a Reds uniform. With the Blue Jays, it's like, okay,
yeah,
you're from Canada, I can forgive that. But it's like if he was just playing in a Diamondbacks uniform, you'd be like, man, what is this? Like, you're a Red. You'll always be a Cincinnati Red.
yeah,
But then
no,
we have Paul
agreed.
Goldschmidt at 353, and he's 36. He might have
And you kind of started to see. I'd say, I mean, he won MVP in what he was.
19 or maybe 20, or it was within the last 5 years. I know that. I know it was
Yeah,
22. It was
yeah.
22
He
that he
won
got it.
MVP in 22, and then yeah, and then like since then since then I mean like he fell off a little bit. Last year he fell off a little bit, and even then he still had like 25, and like this year he's like kind of really like fallen off a cliff, and he still he still has 13 home runs, so he's still kind of on pace to get like 20 to 25 home runs this year. But this is kind of the year where you started to see that decline. So like I don't know if he really has the time or like the ability anymore to get about 150 more home runs.
Or even just getting to 400 might be beyond him.
Yeah.
That's the guy. I by the way, I would put him in the Hall. Like if I don't know if we'll do Hall cases tonight or in a future show, but Paul Goldschmidt to me, a very rare first baseman that you like. He's the Jeff Bagwell type. You look up, he's got 400 home runs and I believe over 200 steals, and also a terrific first baseman in his own right. Paul Goldschmidt to me, like if you had to give me his case, I'm stamping him in. Freddie Freeman's in the top 5. Now he's interesting because he's at 335 and he's 34, but he's gotten better since he got to the Dodgers. I don't know how many more years he's got, but if he's just going to keep putting up these lines, 400 seems pretty attainable. But even then, not even, I can't say 500's reasonably within reach at that age.
Yeah, I think 500 for him would be pretty tough. I think he'll get to 400 because he's still got he's still got some years left. The Dodgers did sign him to like a pretty long-term deal, so I think he will stick around long enough, and I think that hopefully his body should withstand the test of time to get to at least 400. But yeah, when you're talking about 500, that's where it does get kind of murky. I mean, he's been in the league since like 2011 was like his first season. So he's had a 15-year career. So if you're assuming that his career is basically, like, if we're being generous, his career is probably like 2/3 over, or
Yeah.
like maybe three-quarters over. Um, it's kind of hard. Like he would have to have like he would have to have like a renaissance year where he hits like 40, 45 home runs one year or something.
Yeah. Like you got
I'm
to have
saying
that jump.
renaissance year like he's not still really good, but like just from
Yeah.
like a power standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, he hasn't had, I mean, he had 38 in 2019. And since then, well, I mean, I won't count the COVID year, obviously, because it was 60 games, but 31, 21, 29, and then 14 this year. And I mentioned the COVID year, and I think we were talking about this just before we started the show. I think that's a big reason that you're seeing this milestone gap, or at least the one that's on the way, is even the very best of the best. Even if you played that full season in 2020, you still lost over 100 games just because of what happened. Like you could go in there, have an MVP caliber year, put up or be on pace for, your normal stat line, but you still lost those 100 games. And like that's something that Trout and Altuve and Freeman and all those guys, you don't get those 100 games back, and the opportunity when you're as healthy as you are right then and there, You don't get
Yeah,
that back.
at
I
that
think that's bigger than we realize.
yeah, at that point in your career, your health, your age, like you basically lose a year to COVID, or at least 2/3 of a year. Um, so yeah, I mean, I do think 500 home runs is attainable to see again. We kind of discussed like who the candidates are. I think if anyone's going to do it, if I had to put my money on one person, I'd probably just put it on Giancarlo Stanton, just because he's the closest, and because I think that he has like the most. The most time, like from a contract standpoint and the standpoint of the ballpark that he plays in, and that's definitely not me being biased at all. But
I think Bryce has to be up there too. He's at 327 and he's 31. And he's someone who said he's playing out his whole contract in Philadelphia. He said, I think he said it when he signed. He's like, you've got all 13 years of me. I plan on being here. And, I mean, he's done everything he's can since to basically make sure he's never leaving Philadelphia. And he's only gotten better I feel like each year he gets better in Philadelphia. And it doesn't seem like, I think they have Schwarber for 2 more years under contract. I imagine at that point, Bryce becomes the full-time DH. And the power's always been there with Bryce. I mean, even
oh yeah,
from
since day one.
From the day that we found out about him in high school, it was, he does all these other things. You
But
should
he
see
hits
the home runs
nukes.
he hit. That was
Yeah.
always there. So here we are at 31. He might win the MVP again this year, and he's at 327 already. I think Bryce feels. I know Stanton's only needs 80 to get there. I would feel safe. No, I feel like Bryce may be the biggest lock of that bunch to get there.
Yeah, no, he very may well be. He's still 173 out, but should be. I think he's got 173 more in him over the next. So it's 13-year deal he signed in 2019. So this is year. So he's halfway through that. So yeah, I would say if he averages he'll probably finish this year with. I mean, he has 21 this year, which already has tied what he got on 2023. So he'll probably finish this year with, let's say, probably high 30s. I would say 35. Like
Yeah.
maybe he cracks 40. But yeah, I'd say somewhere in like that 35, 38 range this year. And then if he can, be in like that 30 to 35 range for the next, for the next 5 or 6 years, 7 years, whatever it is, then I think that gets him there,
And you talk about
maybe pretty comfortably.
you talk about the ballpark you play in helping you being a left-handed hitter in Citizens Bank.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that definitely doesn't hurt. And, I think that, he'll probably become the DH when he'll probably become the full-time DH when Schwarber leaves. I think though that they need to do what they can to if for the sake of I mean, not to be like putting on my Phillies like cap right now, which, is like a war crime. Uh like I think from the standpoint, not only if you're trying to like, win championships as the Phillies, but also like if you're trying to make sure that Bryce Harper gets to 500, I think you need Schwarber there as long as possible to provide that protection in the lineup.
Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't hurt right now having Bryce at first base, and it seems like he's been mostly adequate there. And again, that leaves you the possibility. It's like, hey, we can just keep Schwarber here, and I mean, he's going to be a career DH, and seems to be going just fine there. And it's, look, we're going to be the home run team. If you can keep Bryce at first, and that allows you to keep Schwarber around, and I can't see that skill set dropping anytime soon. Like, yeah, that's going to keep you, one, in contention for a good amount of time, but two, certainly would allow you to have that chance for Bryce to have 500 home runs as a Philly, which I don't think they've had a guy do that in their uniform since Mike Schmidt. So I'm sure they would love to have that too.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it's good for, I think it's good for everyone, it's good for the Phillies, it's good for the game, and it's good for business if Bryce Harper reaches that 500 mark. So, you know, even though we're pretty anti-Philly around these parts, I would be rooting for him to get that milestone. So yeah, I would say him and Stanton are probably the top two candidates as far as that goes. The other the other players that we mentioned are there's a lot more question marks with the other players. The next milestone we're going to discuss though is 300 wins for a starting pitcher. Now this is one that I really don't see happening. I really don't see us seeing another 300 win pitcher in our lifetimes. I mean, the closest pitcher to it right now is Justin Verlander with 260. He is 41 years old and he has 3 wins this year. And just with the way that like baseball is played now, like you need to get through 5 innings to as a starter, you need to get through 5 innings to be eligible to be eligible for the win. You need to pitch at least 5 innings and your team has to have the lead in those 5 innings and not relinquish that lead for you to be eligible to get the win. He only has 3 this year, and with the way baseball is played this day and age, with everything that we know about analytics, teams really don't like pushing players, especially a player of his age, for as good as Justin Verlander, is and was, and granted he's currently injured, but he only has 3 this year, and it's really not uncommon for teams to like take a pitcher out, in the 4th or 5th inning.
It's that third time through the order thing.
Yeah, before they get to that third time through the lineup, teams are usually trying to be proactive in taking their starter out rather than reactive. So that is one that I really don't see being reached, and I think that people kind of know. I mean, I think if you ask a pitcher, they'll say that that wins, the wins matter, and that it's something. I'm sure if you ask Justin Verlander if he wants to get to 300 wins, I'm sure he'd say that he would love to, but ultimately, like, wins for a pitcher, because you also need the run support. So wins for a pitcher is kind of like a moot stat in my opinion. But yeah, that's one that I really don't see happening.
I think 250 might be like a benchmark number that you don't see a lot of guys that going forward, because you mentioned Verlander at the top of the list and he's at 260. The next on the list is Max Scherzer and he's at 215. And I mean, if we talk about the best pitchers over the last 15 years, it's any of the 3 of Kershaw, Verlander, and Scherzer. It's any of those 3. And Scherzer's probably not going to hit 250. Clayton Kershaw's got 210, and Kershaw's walking into the Hall of Fame. Garrett Cole's at 147, and he's 33. Jacob deGrom, as a legitimate Hall of Fame case, has 2 Cy Youngs. I would argue should have had 3, but the media had an infatuation with Trevor Bauer. Jacob deGrom's at 84, and he's 36 years old. He might not get to 100 before his career's over. Like, that's
at the rate things are going, and at the rate which he gets injured, I would say, 100 might be, especially like, I mean, if the run support that he gets from Texas, I mean, we've kind of really yet to see him play in Texas, but like, if it's anything like the run support he got with the Mets, he's probably not sniffing 100.
No. Yeah, and then you look through the list of, I mentioned it was Kershaw was 3 at 210, then it's Cole at 147. Johnny Cueto's listed on here as active. I don't think he's pitched at least 2 years. He's 144. Lance Lynn 141, and this is probably his last year. Charlie Morton has said this is his last year, 135. Chris Sale's 133, and he's at the end. And we look at the next generation of guys who we project to be aces, or guys that we think are aces right now. Aaron Nola just cleared 100. Zach Wheeler is 3 wins away from 100. Kevin Gossman's at 95. Nady Eovaldi's at 85. Like that's
Yeah, and
the bar now.
Evaldi's been in the league like for well over a decade at this point
Yeah.
too. And he's like not even he's like not even close to 100, and especially like with all these like new up and coming pitchers that come in, like you saw it with Strasburg when he came into the league, and you're seeing it now with Paul Skeens. They have all these guys on, like, from day one that they get in, they have all these guys on like pretty strict like innings or pitch limits. So yeah, I would say you're really not going to see. You're really. I would say like even 200 might end up being like the benchmark going forward.
Yeah. And I don't have Strasburg's number in front of me, but I bet he might have just cleared 100 because he would be good for 15 to 16 wins per year, but he could never really get to 20 because he couldn't hold up long enough. I
Right.
almost feel like that would have been a tipping point in the other direction because the Nationals did everything they could. And, whether we think that was right or wrong, he held up for 7 or 8 years. They do not win that World Series without him. I mean, he was arguably the pitching force that got them there. Obviously they had Soto and Rendon at the plate, but with Strasburg,
back when
nothing
Rendon
to agree
actually
they did.
Yeah,
They
back
don't
when
win it without
Rendon
him.
actually liked playing baseball, and was actually good at it. But
What a
yeah,
world.
yeah, Strasburg has 113, so he did clear 100 by like a kind of a small margin, all things considered. But yeah, you're right. They definitely don't win the 2019 World Series without him. You have to give the Nationals a lot of credit in 2012 for shutting him down for that postseason, having the foresight that they were going to need him for the postseason 7 years from then to win a World Series.
It's what's so fascinating to me going forward about Hall of Fame discussions is because it used to just be, well, did you win 300 games or did you get 3,000 strikeouts? And it felt like you had to hit
One
of those benchmarks or at least be reasonably close. The 3,000 strikeouts, we'll see, because strikeouts have taken such a jump now, but also guys don't pitch long enough. Like, we see guys have crazy strikeout per 9 numbers and K rates and all that. But you don't see a lot of the raw numbers because you don't just see guys just going 7-8 innings now, where you don't see the crazy 17, 18 strikeout games. You might see a lot of, well, he had 12 and 5 innings or he had 14 and 6, but you don't see guys get the chance to really push it the way even a Scherzer or a Verlander did. I know Scherzer had a 20 strikeout game. We don't even really get to see guys chase history in that sense anymore. And it's a discussion I've had with my friend Tyler, who's a Tiger fan. And, he's always, even when Verlander went to the Astros, he always wanted
Tyler
to see him get the
Tigers.
accolades because it was, well, he's got to be, he wanted to see him make the Hall of Fame. And it's, well, he should have had this Cy Young and he should have had the one that Porcello won. So he got those two with the Astros, and it's all right. Well, now it's an unassailable case. But all those accolades and stuff, like, that's going to matter now. Like, who gets Cy Youngs, who gets strikeout titles, who gets ERA titles. Verlander has 3 no-hitters. I think that's going to help his case too, because that's something that, how many guys can say that? I think it's Nolan, Ryan, Koufax, and him. So stuff like that is going to matter more than ever before. So I know when we get to the end of the year and people get tired of MVP discourse and Cy Young discourse, well, when we get to the end and we're going to figure out who is the best of the best to ever do this, that stuff means more than anything now.
Yeah, I could see, like to your point about like 3,000 strikeouts. So yeah, like it's kind of hard to, it's kind of hard to gauge like what direction that's going to go in, because like pitchers nowadays have so much more swing and miss stuff than pitchers of the past. And, like baseball is more of a 3 true outcome game than it was, like before our time, or even like during our
Even 10 years
time
ago.
earlier. Even a decade ago. But what I could see is, maybe 3,000 strike, because that's still like a lot of strikeouts.
Oh,
And
yeah. I think
for
there's
the,
maybe 15 that have done it.
yeah, that's still a lot, and you still need to pitch a lot and be available a lot, like healthy to be able to reach that mark. But I could see a possibility where maybe Ks per nine kind of replaces overall strikeout numbers
Yeah,
as kind of like
yeah.
the kind of the discussion point, like when people like us are having these debates like in the future about like whether or not the pitchers or the pitchers of today belong in the Hall of Fame or not, like when their careers are all said and done.
Because you talk about the availability, and that's a good point because Verlander's over 3,000, Scherzer's over it, Kershaw's at 2,944. Now we'll see if I think he's still maybe a month away from pitching this year, and whether he comes back next year, I don't know. But presuming he does, he should get there. But the last one before him, or before that group, was CC Sabathia. And what does that group have in common? They're really the last of the workhorse types where you could put it in pen every year. They were going to get 35 starts. You were going to get 200 to 250 innings. You knew what you were getting from them every single time. Because I mentioned that top three, and then it drops to Chris Sale at 4, who, incredible strikeout pitcher in his own right. He's just over 2,300 because Chris Sale's body has started to break down. Granted, he's had a great year with Atlanta this year, but basically from the moment the Red Sox won the World Series in 2018 until this year, Chris Sale's arm was just gone. And you think about all the strikeouts he probably would either be at 3,000 or he'd be right on the doorstep right now if he had been able to just be that typical workhorse, which he had been for the first 7 years of his career, and then that disappeared. Even Garrett Cole is kind of considered a workhorse of the day. He's 33 and he's about to go to 2,200. So you would think, like, even if he's someone that wants to pitch till he's 40, that means you got to get another 800 strikeouts in about 7 seasons. You got to have everything go right physically, and your stuff has to hold up. Because Cole's still throwing 98, 99. Like, your arms and your shoulders still have to have that in you when you're 38, 39. Part of it's luck. It's lucky that Scherzer and Verlander and Kershaw are still able to do that at that age. Kerry Wood and Mark Pryor should have been able to, and we saw how that went. Steven Strasburg should have been one of those. A healthy Steven Strasburg absolutely blows by 3,000 strikeouts. He had that kind of stuff. He just didn't have the good fortune. Even with an organization that did everything they could to make sure that he would get there.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And bringing up CC, he also had his issues like staying healthy towards the end of his career a lot. So, like, while there's nothing to suggest necessarily, I mean, with Kershaw, there definitely is something to suggest, that injuries could be an issue for however much longer he decides he wants to play, which I don't envision it being too much longer. To be honest, I feel like this would probably going to end up being his last year if he even comes back this year. But yeah, like as time goes on, all the wear and tear on your body and on your arm, it definitely adds up. So,
And
there's
another
definitely.
thing to think about is the pitch clock.
Yep. Yeah.
I was a skeptic of this at first, but the more as I've seen it go on, especially this year, I mean, you think about, and I kind of incorporate, we talked about this off air last time, was what Tyler Glasnow talked about when all the sticky stuff went down in 21 or 22. But he had his injury, and he talked about why he uses what he uses and what happened when he didn't.
Yep.
And, teams are asking guys now, it's like, hey, just go out and throw as hard as you can. You don't really see guys get through 7 innings now where it's like, yeah, they were dominant for 4, and then they really had to fight through it in those last 2 to 3 innings, and they were just throwing junk to get through it, which is something Jacob deGrom did a lot early in his career. But they're asking teams, it's like, hey, just throw 99. Just do that as long as you can, as hard as you can. And now you have the pitch clock, and it's do it every 15 seconds.
Yeah.
It's probably a big reason why we've seen the jump more than ever in the pitching injuries, and you're seeing guys miss chunks of time.
Yeah, especially earlier in the year when your arm is like not fully
you're not
up
there
to
yet.
speed. Like that's probably why like Spencer Strider got got sidelined for the season within like
There's a
the
strikeout guy
first
right
couple of
there.
weeks. Yeah, like and like already this early in his career, you have questions about like how how long he'll hold up, or how how many strikeouts he'll end up with. So yeah, there's a lot of variables that go into it, but yeah, safe to say that we will not see another 300 win pitcher probably ever again. So we got two more of these to discuss, and then we're gonna wrap up the show. I think we had a couple of other topics, but we've been here long enough, so we'll save some of the other topics for next week. But uh, let's do another one. We got 400 batting average. So I believe we were talking off air, and the last time this happened was, or the last time this came close to happening was Tony Gwynn.
Mm-hmm.
And he like carried it like into September, and I think he finished with what, like a 389 average or something like that.
There was a couple years like that, and then also I believe he was in the 390s when the strike started in 1994, and that was early August when that happened. And I think that's maybe the biggest thing for me in why it wouldn't happen, and it's because I remember that being a kid. That's when I was first getting into baseball and really like paying attention to it every single day. And I remember what a big deal that was at the time, where it's like, man, are they going to finish the season out and Tony Gwynn can have a shot at this? And that was a big deal then in 1994. He still had almost 2 months to go at that point. Imagine what that would be like now. I remember the coverage around Luis Arias last year, getting into mid-June with that. And he was over 400. I mean, imagine if we got to like September 26th and he's either just over or just behind it. Imagine what a story that would be. I mean, we really haven't had that kind of proximity to 400. Probably not since like the 60s, I would think. I don't think anyone's been that close over a full season in our lifetime at all.
Yeah, I mean, even the fact that Arias finished last year with over 350 was like pretty impressive, with with how with the way that baseball's played now. There's a lot less emphasis on batting average too, and there's a lot more just it's a lot more about your OPS and just overall on base percentage. So like it's almost like they kind of want you to draw walks more than they want you to like hit singles, and at least like from a philosophical standpoint as far as like your approach goes. But yeah, I mean, he was like the closest one to come. Like he was the closest one to come to it in like a few decades, and he settled in at 354, and even that was like super impressive at the time. So that's one I would agree that we'll probably never see that. I guess the counter to that argument would be that, like, with like baseball's changing, like on a year-to-year basis, there's like different trends in the game and things change a lot. So like, could we get back to a point where
Yeah.
like players are hitting to get on base again, or like trying to hit for average again?
The pendulum always swings. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, but you know, to sit here and say right now, like, that's something that hasn't happened since like 30 years before.
1941.
Yeah, to sit here and say that something that hasn't happened since like 50 years before we were born is going to happen is a pretty tough sell.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a reason we remember the people that did it. Like, yeah, I know Ted Williams did it. I know Ty Cobb did it. I know who George Sisler is. But like, there's a reason it's an exclusive club. So the last person to do it over a full season was George Brett, and that was 1980. And he only played 117 games that year. So it makes you wonder, if he had to play a full 140. Like, it's just like, you think about what it takes to have a 400 average if you play 140, 150 games a year, or even 130. Like, 130 is a reasonably high total. You're thinking you've probably got to get about close to 1 to 2 hits every single game. That means like a weak slump almost takes you out of that. That means
Yeah.
you have to be at that level of hitting for 6 months. That
Yeah, you just have to like not go into a slump, which is basically I don't care what era of baseball you're playing in. It's basically impossible to avoid going into a slump for a week at some point over
yeah.
the course of 162 games.
I mean, it's the physical, it's the mental in terms of being that sharp, and it kind of ties in what we were talking about with pitchers is especially now, you don't get to face that starting pitcher the third or fourth time where, yeah, his velocity might have been there and his best stuff was there the first two times you faced him, but now he's up there, he's at 110, 120 pitches, and his stuff's maybe not there the way it was earlier in the night, and that's when you get your hit off of him. You don't get tired pitchers anymore. You're getting
Yeah,
everybody's best stuff. Even if it's a junk reliever, even if it's a reliever who's not that good, he's probably
you're
still
getting his
throwing
best.
95, 96, or he's got
Yeah.
a devastating off speed pitch.
Yeah, or even just like every pitcher has like a different release and like a different release point. So even just like you only get like two opportunities to like see like the ball come out of a pitcher's hand like at that
Right.
same release point. You only get like two opportunities for that. So it's like if you don't make the most out of that, then if you don't make the most out of that, then it's just really hard to do,
Well,
which
now you got to pick up this next guy, and he's throwing harder than the guy he's coming in for. Like you don't get your timing patterns down. You don't get to really get a book on a guy. I mean, that's a thing that we heard forever from hitters was, yeah, I had faced this guy 20 times before. Most of my bats went this way. Sometimes I knew he threw this. You don't really get to really study a pitcher the way that you used to always be able to do for the first 150 years of the game.
yeah, and I guess this kind of ties into one of the other records that we had discussed, which is Joe DiMaggio's 56 game hitting streak. Now we did see Brian Reynolds get to about 20. He got into the 20s. I think he got close to like I think he had like 20 finished like with 24 or 25. Like a 24 or 25 game hitting streak before it ended. Yeah, he had a 25 game hitting streak. And even that in itself is like extremely impressive this day and age. So I mean, he didn't even crack like halfway, and I think that with everything that we kind of just discussed, with the fact that you're only going to get two shots usually at a starter, and the fact that these pitchers are throwing harder than ever, I think this is one that I feel pretty safe in saying that we will probably never see again. Like I'm not even sure off the top of my head who has like who had the second longest hitting streak in history, but I'm pretty sure that whenever it did happen was like a pretty like the second longest was Willie Keeler in 1896 to 1897. He had a 45 game hitting streak. And then Pete Rose did 44 in 1978. So like
I know
pretty much
Jimmy Rollins is the closest in my lifetime. He had 39, and even that was a ended one season, went into the next type of streak. So that wasn't even over one whole year.
and that's like an interesting aspect to it too, is like the fact that like you could like end the season on a hitting streak, and then it's like you have to wait 6 months to play again,
And you're
and
thinking
then
about it the whole time.
you're thinking about it the whole time, and then like when you get out there, you're probably pressing a little bit if you are trying to continue that hitting streak. You're probably pressing a little bit, plus like you know you could be on a new team at that point, or you could be facing like a new pitcher that's never pitched an MLB before that you don't have any like gauge for or any film on. So there's so many variables that just make it
And you're facing every staff that you're facing is, well, we're not letting him continue this streak. Because then it
yeah.
becomes a point of pride for the pitchers where it's like, all right,
Exactly.
not
Yeah, you
tonight.
don't want to be. Yeah, yeah. It's like you don't want to. It's kind of like when you're getting a no hitter or a perfect game thrown on you. It's like you don't want to be the one to make that final out, or you don't want to like give them the satisfaction of like having that happen to you. It's like if it does, like you tip your cap and show respect where it's due, but you don't want to allow that to happen.
And to kind of tie into, we've both talked about how the approach has kind of changed a lot of things now. And it's the three true outcomes. And it's something that's been brought up. And I know I'm not the first to say it, but strikeouts aren't considered taboo now. It used to be the worst thing that could happen was, oh man, you struck out. And you're seeing even the best hitters now are running up high strikeout totals because it's, all right, well, if I put the ball in play, I know I'm going to do damage. Like, we're at the All-Star break, and I say this because I think it's probably the best example. Aaron Judge is having probably an MVP season. He's already got 106 strikeouts, and we're at the break. But no one would look at that and go, oh, man, he's got over 106, because you know what he does the rest of the time. Usually he's going to put the ball in play, or teams are going to walk him because they're afraid to pitch to him. Julio Rodriguez has 110, and he's near the top of the list. Teoscar Hernandez just won the home run derby. He's at 113. He's hitting 261. I think teams would gladly take that. There's been a de-emphasis on you just can't strike out. Now it's like, hey, look, if you try to put the ball in play and you're going to try to drive the ball, we'll live with it. And I don't even think even 10 years ago that would have necessarily been the approach across the league.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like, even the fact that Judge is like hitting over the fact that Judge is like hitting over 300 at this point, and I do kind of expect that number to come a little down to earth in the second half of the season. I think he'll probably finish closer to like 275, 280. But even the fact that he's hitting like over 300 right now is kind of insane when you think about the fact that he did strike out 106 times and he's hit 34 home runs. Like, it's very rare you see someone, hit that many home runs and also, and strike out that much and also still like have over 300 batting average, which that used to be like one of like the benchmark, like, like numbers when you're discussing like Hall of Fame. Like, okay, if he's a hitter, does he have a 300 average? Yes or no? No. Okay, get the fuck out of here. So the fact that he still has over 300 average with those, like, with the numbers that he has in the three true outcome categories is just kind of mind-boggling.
And you see more teams kind of encouraging their best guys to be like that. I mean, I know Soto's strikeout numbers aren't like that, but it's usually like if he puts the ball in play, he's driving it. Yordan Alvarez, if he's putting the ball in play, he's driving it. A lot of the Astros were like that. It's, yeah, strike out if you want. We know that if you put the ball in play, it's going to be extra bases. That's what we're aiming for. And I think you see that the top guys can be the very, maybe that upper 2%. Like Bryce can be like that. Bryce can strike out a lot. No one's going to get on him for that because you know what Bryce is going to do 80% of the time. And so you see a lot of those hitters are modeling that, where we've seen it with the launch angle in terms of how guys are looking to swing and the swing plane changes that we've seen. And yeah, that's just going to be a thing now. And you might get an 0 for 4 night with 4 strikeouts. And guess what? I know I'm going to come back tomorrow night. I'm going to have 2 doubles and a homer, and I'm going to drive in 5 runs, and we're going to win the game. All right, I went 0 for the night before. Oh, well.
Yeah, it all just kind of it all kind of evens out. Yeah, and like Yordan Alvarez is someone that's just like, it's just like, just looking at him in the batter's box, he's just like scary looking.
It's the closest swing to Carlos Delgado's I've seen since he retired. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's pretty unreal. But this has been a lot of fun discussing kind of taking a trip down memory lane with some of these records and milestones, and kind of taking a look at where the game is going in the future. We have a few more things that we're going to discuss, like in this spectrum of topics that we'll save for next week. But we're gonna close out the show for now. But before we do that, we obligatorily have to tell you to make sure that you are following at MIPod69 and at follow MIPod69 Twitter, Instagram. Follow at middle_initial_podcast on TikTok, and make sure you follow our Twitter account at BDPOD24. We will be making other social media accounts in the near future. I assume, just have a few things to figure out, but yeah, make sure you're following us. Make sure you're subscribed to us. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channels and all that stuff. And yeah, that's about all I've got. You have any final words?
No, this was fun. I love talking about where we are and where we're going. It's going to be great because I mean I can remember watching Pujols and Miggy in high school, and next thing you know, their careers fly by, and pretty soon we're going to be looking up, and it's going to be Soto and Bryce's turn in Cooperstown and stuff like that, and we're going to be like, man, how did we get here? So it's cool to be talking about how we're getting there as it's happening.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely awesome, and this is like the perfect time to like have these conversations. Like during the All-Star break, there's really nothing nothing going on of significance in the world. So this is the perfect time to you know either give yourself a distraction from the reality of the world, or just take your mind off of what's going on, and have these discussions. So I definitely enjoyed it. It was definitely thought provoking, and we'll look forward to discussing this some more next week, and hopefully also discussing how good the Yankees and Mets are post how good of a start they are off to post All-Star break. So
Might have
thank
some
you
more trades
everyone.
too.
Yep. Trade deadline coming up just 2 weeks away. So that I'm sure will start to pick up as well, and we will be here to guide you through each step of the way. So thank you all for tuning in, and until next time.